The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this October 24th. Hopefully everybody's having a fantastic week and looking forward to the weekend. All right, so today, I have to admit, I mean, there wasn't a lot of news. Almost all the news was Kamala said this, Trump said that, Kamala said this, Trump said that, the poll said this, the poll said that. James Carville said Kamala's going to win 100%, counting it. That's all people seem to want to talk about. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's boring. Nobody knows anything, and they don't know. And, you know, and it doesn't matter at this point. I don't know how many undecided there are in the United States at this point in the game. So we will see. Okay, so that's number. So there wasn't, it's not a lot going on. I mean, like, I'm sitting on pins and needles here, convinced that any day now, every day now, Israel will attack Iran and we'll have something to talk about. That's not happening. No attack, right? I'm waiting for Apple to announce the new M4 Mac Mini so I can replace the workhorse I've got on my desk with something more powerful. And that's not happening. It's like no news. So, you know, we cobbled together some news. Some interesting things are happening. But it was a stretch today, I have to admit. And I will take the opportunity then to analyze a video, to do a reaction video to Patrick Ben-David's video on tariffs. I really want to do some reaction videos to a bunch of other things. There's at least one Jordan Peterson video, and there's the Elon Musk interview with Tucker Carlson. I'll try to get all of those and do those reaction videos as well. Ian says, just talk about John Kelly stuff more. That shouldn't be a one-day story. But it is, and it's not even a one-day story. It's like John Kelly's been saying this stuff about Trump for 2, 3, 4 years. I've been talking about it. I've got nothing new to say about Trump. I've been saying the same stuff about Trump for 9 years. 2015 is when I started saying bad things about Trump, and nothing really has changed. So what's the point of saying more? What's the point of saying no more? There's no point. It's if you haven't got it, those who haven't got it yet, it's finished. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's boring. Trump is boring. I mean, until he becomes president, and then he becomes, scary and entertaining at the same time. Jordan Peterson is publicizing a Bible studies tour. Yeah, I mean, I could comment on Jordan Peterson's Bible stories. I'm tempted to do my own. Like Yaron Rules for Life, I can do Yaron's Bible stories. I'm tempted to do that. It would be very different than, but I'm not. I don't remember the stories well enough to actually go to do that. I'd actually have to go and read the Bible again, read the stories, and really, and who has the energy to read the Bible? I've done that. Yeah, we could do Yaron's Sunday school. We could do it on Sundays too. And I could charge extra for it, and we could go through the Old Testament. And if I was super interested in it, I would. I'd read the Old Testament and the Old Testament, and we could do that, and it would be fun. I've got interesting things to say about all the stories that Jordan Peterson talks about. I have a very different interpretation of them. But it's, not that interesting. But if you have ideas for like a series of things that we could do, that the Yaron Brook Show could do, let me know. I'm open to ideas about a series like that. Cook already read the Bible. You're late. Who's Cook? I don't know who Cook is. Yeah, I mean, I've read the Bible a long time ago, some of it more than once. Yeah, not that interesting. Okay. I mean, interesting, but not at the top of my priority list in terms of things I want to read. Anyway, today's 2 weeks since I had, well, yesterday was 2 weeks since I had the surgery. Today, first time I saw the doctor after the surgery, and first a session of physical therapy that I had. So the doctor seems pleased by his handiwork. I mean, he did a good job. So he seems pleased. He looked at it. He checked my range of motion. He looks pretty happy with the whole thing. I still have to wear the sling for 6 frigging weeks. That is the one downside, but other than that, he seems happy with it. I then went to do physical therapy, and I'm really happy with this physical therapist. It looks like he's done a lot of rotator cuff surgery, rehab work with Major League Baseball pitchers. So he knows his stuff. And those are pitchers, Puerto Rican Major League Baseball pitchers, the several of them, or players. Anyway, he knows his stuff. He's also one of these. I was looking on the web, and a lot of people saying a lot of it's very passive. This guy's not passive at all. This guy's move your arms, push it this way, move it that way, stretch. Anyway, aggressive. I like aggressive. I did it. I surprised myself by how much range of motion I have, although it's not pain-free, but range of motion I have. Afterwards, it hurt. So that's when Tylenol came in handy. And that's why I postponed the show a little bit, because it was this afternoon, and then by the time I got home and I was in pain, and I iced it, and I took some Tylenol and everything. I wanted to get into decent shape before I did the show. So that's why I delayed it from 7 to 8 p.m. Anyway, that was my day, jumping on doctor's offices. And in Puerto Rico, my doctor's appointment was 7:45. I got to see the doctor, I think, at 10:30, which is not bad, right? 2 hours and 45-minute wait. That's pretty good in Puerto Rico. So it beats the 6 hours that once I had to wait for him. Anyway, so that's how I spend my day. You can waste a lot of time waiting for doctors over here. A lot of time. But anyway, next week, 3 sessions of physical therapy. And then the following week, 1 session of physical therapy, and then I'm traveling, right? So I'm going to travel with this sling. And I'm traveling, as if you remember, I'm doing the event in Nashville. You all are invited. You can find information about it on my website, yaronbrookshow.com. New website. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the new website. Ideas for improvements, ideas to make it more interesting, punchier, ideas to get people to sign up more and to make contributions and stuff like that. So anyway, Nashville and then Denver, all of that's on the website. And then I'm probably going, I'll know tomorrow, but I'm probably going from Denver to Latin America and probably do 3 talks in Latin America before I head home for a week before my round the world trip starts on the 23rd of 23rd of what month? 23rd of November. So we've got like a week and a bit, and then basically I'm on the road for 4 out of the following 5 weeks. 4 out of the following 5 weeks. And is that right? 5 out of the following 6 weeks. 5 out of the following 6 weeks. And yeah, that's gonna be hard. But if you're in one of those countries that I happen to be visiting, please come and say hello. If you're in Denver, if you're in Nashville, please sign up for the events. Come and say hello. If you're not in Denver, sign up for the live stream. Come on, people, sign up for the live stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's 2 days after the election. It's a lot of reaction, and it's going to cost you less than what you do in Super Chat, $15. So sign up. All right. Doesn't Yaron always abstain from sugar? What's that got to do with anything? How did we get to sugar? Why did we get to sugar? Sugar abstinence. Sugar abstinence is good for what? Exactly. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat much sugar. I can't say I don't eat any sugar. I'm sure some of the sauces at the restaurants I go to have sugar in them. But I generally don't eat a lot of sugar, very, very little sugar. But heat patches, I'm using ice packs. But heat and ice, you got to do both. And Tylenol works. Anti-inflammatories, I don't like Aleve and Advil. You got to be careful how much you take. But yes. I see one of Freeman has got a medical degree. He's got a medical degree, so that's good. Things are good. Okay, so anyway, I'll be on the road. What else do I want to tell you? Do we want to jump in? Yeah, let's talk about the elections. So, I mean, basically, the polls are showing this election basically in all seven toss-up, all seven battleground states, all the 7 states that we're not sure who's going to win. Everything else pretty much predetermined. That it's a dead heat. It's a tie. Even the national numbers are within the margin of error. But as I've been saying for the last week or two, it's clear that the momentum has shifted. And while everything is in the margin of error, some of the models like 538 and Nate Silver's model and something clear politics model. There's a number of models that take into account the polls. They take into account all kinds of other factors, biases, and they kind of aggregate the polls and they model it and they run. I know Nate Silver's model. Well, at 538, it's a very similar model. They run a lot of simulations, and then of course there's the betting market. And as I've said last few weeks, the momentum and the leaning has shifted towards Trump. The betting markets have also shifted dramatically towards Trump. Now, that's hard to tell. They're not heavily traded markets, so they're easy to manipulate. It could be just a lot of pro-Trump money flowed in and hit those markets and shifted them. So it's in a very low 50s, right? So 51, 52% for Trump, 47, 48% for Kamala. So that's what the models are predicting. Again, the betting markets are much more strongly pro-Trump, for Trump in terms of the odds. People have looked at the early voting. Some states you can already see how the early voting is coming through, and that looks like it leans Trump. So, it really does look like if nothing happens over the next 2 weeks, and I don't think anybody cares about what Kelly said about Trump. I don't think anybody, I think the undecided, I don't know what's going to make them go one way or the other on the undecided vote, right? I just don't know if there's enough undecided vote to make a difference. It really does seem to me like, sadly, that this is tilting towards Trump at this point. And that Trump is probably going to win. It also looks like Republicans will win the Senate. I'm more confident Republicans will win the Senate than I am that Trump will win. And by the way, my estimates of who will win or lose should bear almost no relevance in your life, because I do not have a particularly good track record on this. I don't have a particularly bad track record. I've been more open to surprises than others, but I'm no expert. It just strikes me from what I'm reading that the momentum has shifted, that Trump, in the early voting is more strongly Republican than what one would expect. And there's a good chance that Trump would win this. I'm hopeful, and I know some of you are going to hate me for this, but I'm very, very, very hopeful that the House tilts Democratic. I'm really worried at this point. Here's my worry at this point. My worry at this point is that Trump wins, they get the Senate, and they get the House. Now, whoever wins the House is going to win by a very small margin, I expect, unless there's a surprise. But I'm really hopeful that a lot of the MAGA House members lose and that somehow, Democrats win the House. The Democrats have to have something to block Trump, right? And they're not going to get the Senate. There's just no path. The best they can do probably in the Senate is 50-50. And if Trump wins, the Senate is his, right? Because J.D. Vance becomes the 51st senator. So the Democrats just have to win in the House. I don't know how they do it, but they need to do that. They need to do that. I mean, I really dread Republicans winning everything. I don't know how that ends. Anyway, that's best sense I have right now. It's what I think I've been pretty consistent about this the last 2 weeks, or the last week and a half. With this change, I think the more. I mean, this is the bottom line, really. Everybody knows Trump. Trump's a known quantity. But the more people see Kamala, the less they like her. She's just not impressing. She's had the opportunity. She's done the town halls. She's done the interviews. She's done the rounds. She's had an opportunity to impress. And she hasn't, because she's not impressive. She's just not impressive. She's just, she doesn't speak well. She's not articulate. She's not charismatic. She's not that good. And so there you go. I mean, she could have won this. She could have won it. And she still can. I just don't see her doing it. I don't think it's Hillary. I don't think Americans hate her like they hated Hillary. Hillary lost because Americans despise her. They really disliked her. Really, really, really disliked her. And I don't think they dislike Harris. They're just not impressed by her. She's not. She needs to be able to speak well off the cuff. She needs to be able to respond in a town hall to questions. She needs to be able to do good interviews. And she doesn't give you the confidence that she can think on her feet, which is what a president would have to do. So, and again, surprising, because you think that a prosecutor would be able to think on their feet, would be articulate. So it is a little surprising that she can't do it. All right, so that's the story of the election. What can I say? I mean, anybody who's followed me for any period of time knows my thoughts about Trump. So there's no point in me overly repeating them. Although, I mean, I'm happy to answer super chat questions about Trump if you have any, which is a way for you to get me to speak more about Trump if you want me to. One of the stories that I came across this week, it comes out of the UK, is a poll that the Times of London ran in the United States. And then there was also a similar poll done by YouGov in the US. And both polls asked Americans about whether they thought there was a possibility that this election could result in a civil war, in real violence in the streets by either political side. And about 27% of Americans in the Times of London poll said yes. 30 of them were women, 30% women, 24% men, so women more fearful than men with regard to this. With the YouGov poll, it was 12% said that they knew someone who might take up arms if they thought Donald Trump was cheated out of victory, 12%. 5% said they knew someone who would do the same if they thought Kamala Harris was cheated. So, what is the probability that there was violence in the streets at the end of this election? I think it's fairly high. I don't think we'll have a civil war. I've said many times, I don't think we're going to have a civil war. It's not clear who would fight whom, where. it's not like red state, blue state, because red states are very bluish and blue states have large red populations. It's not easy to split this up. I guess there is a possibility of a civil war. You can't say it's a probability zero, but it's very small. But violence in the streets is not. I mean, we saw that with BLM. We certainly saw with January 6th. We saw that both sides, left and right, are very capable of violence, politically motivated violence in the streets. They're quite capable of burning down stores and cars and flipping cars and rioting and breaking stuff and beating people up and yeah, I mean. So I don't know what the probability of that is. I don't know. You know, the left has not shown strength in organizing things like this. I mean, there was talk about these big, massive demonstrations during the Democratic National Convention or the pro-Palestinian side. Never really materialized, right? Never, they weren't that big. These pro-Palestinian demonstrations are nasty, but they're in a few cities. They're not that huge. So if Trump wins, could the left actually organize this? Now, remember, all those are funded by Hezbollah. Would George Soros fund demonstrations against a Trump victory and trying to overturn an election? Maybe. But I haven't read anything that suggests that there's organization around it. If Kamala wins, I think it's more dangerous in this sense. See, if Trump wins, I don't think Kamala and Obama and the Clintons would go out and foment a civil war. I don't think they'd go out there and say, go out into the streets, let's riot, let's burn America down. I just don't think they would do that. They might say demonstrate, but I think they would be restrained. If Kamala wins, I can very much see Trump going out in front of his people and saying, burn the country down. I could see that. I don't see Obama even doing that. Obama, by the way, his shtick on the road as he's traveling around the United States, campaigning for Kamala, keeps saying he doesn't understand how America got so divided. How did this happen? When did this happen? How did it happen? Who's to blame? And the amazing thing is that if you really look at it, it really did happen under his watch. It happened during the Obama administration. It happened because of Obamacare. It happened because of just his attitude towards most of Americans. It happened because of his, I think, as I said at the time, the first president in American history who did not like America. It was not pro-America. It happened because of his moral equivalencies. It happened because he was insulting to Americans. He brought this about. It happened because of his aloofness. That Tea Party period and all of that. So Obama did it. But Obama, I don't see Obama going out in front of cars and saying, let's march to the Capitol. And, you know, he's too, he thinks of himself as too civilized. Whether he is or is not is a different question. But if Kamala wins, you could imagine Trump saying that. You could imagine Trump proxy saying that. You could imagine, you know, J.D. Vance saying it. You can imagine these people actually encouraging violence. So here's a pitch for Denver, right? It could very well be that in Denver, when we're talking about the election results, and for that matter, in Nashville, where we're going to be talking about democracy, it could be that while we're talking, you know, fires are burning, you know, parts of American cities are burning, there's violence in the streets. It could be that by Wednesday or Thursday, the election has not yet been decided. It could be really, really, really interesting time. And this is why it would be interesting to have you come to a live event where we discuss the election. Could be fun. All right. I don't have anything more to say about the elections. I mean, I'll answer your questions, but I don't really have anything more. Whoa, Randall came in with his first Super Chat contribution ever. And he made it a whopper $300 Australian dollars. So we've got another Australian. I'll read the question later and answer it. And it looks like it's a part one of two. I'm not sure whether part two is yet, but it looks like a part one of two. Anyway, I do want to mention that that Randall's Australian, so I do want to mention the fact that in December, I will be in Australia. I will be part of the Ayn Rand conference in Brisbane, Australia. I hope, Randall, you come. I hope the rest of the Aussies listening to the Yaron Brook Show make an appearance and come to the conference. I will also be doing events in Sydney. Details on those events will be going up on my website in the weeks to come. I'll be doing at least one event on Israel, pro-Israel. So I'll need your help. Please come. And I'll be doing, I'm not sure what the other event is. I'm doing a number of events in Sydney. So please come. Also, for those interested who might not be in the US, I will be doing events in an event in Tokyo. I'm really looking forward to that. Tokyo on art. It'll be all on aesthetics because Romantic Manifesto is coming out in Japanese. So I'll be doing an event on art. We'll talk about Japanese aesthetics, how that fits or doesn't fit into Ayn Rand's view of art. It'll be really, I think, really interesting. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. But if you're in Tokyo, if you're in Japan, and you'd like to come, it's open to the public. Again, information of that will be published on my website as soon as I have more details. All right, I just wanted to thank Randall, obviously, for his first Super Chat ever at $300 Australian dollars, and then another $200 Australian dollars for part two of the question, which I'll get to in a little while. But that was his first Super Chat. But also we have Frederick, also his first Super Chat. Thank you, Frederick. And we have Jerome, fifth Super Chat. YouTube gives me information about like certain milestones. 1, 3, 5, 10, and 20, I think. They should give me one for like 100 or 200 or 500. Like, you know, Michael, I'm sure has, and Hopper Campbell, I mean, Michael has the most, I think, but I'm sure Mary Aline and Hopper Campbell and Liam and these guys all have, and Cook and Clark all have gazillions. So it would be nice for YouTube to give me those numbers. All right, let's get through the rest of the news because I see we have some cool questions and I want to get to them. Russia. A few things about Russia. A few stories about Russia, and then we'll talk about Moldova, which is related to Russia, and then we'll do the analysis of Patrick Ben David's analysis of tariffs. So, you know, Russia, beyond fighting a war in Ukraine, a war of aggression in Ukraine, Russia has dedicated itself to creating dissonance around the world. Russia has allied itself with Iran and is helping Iran out in a variety of different ways. There are strong rumors that Russia is going to help Iran out vis-a-vis Israel's attack on Iran that, as you know, I'm waiting for. Maybe in defense, there's a possibility that Iran has received S-400 anti-aircraft ground-to-air missiles from the Russians. These are the most advanced systems. They have them in Syria. They've never used them. The Iranians might use them, maybe not. Iran has also supposedly received other equipment from the Russians. Israel delaying so much has only allowed Russia to supply the Iranians with more. You know, Russia is also creating instability in Africa, where the United States and certain allies are trying to fight ISIS. and Russia's intervening and not really and trying to kick the Americans out of and allies and the French out of Africa. Russia, of course, helps the Syrians. Today, we saw pictures coming out of Lebanon of crates of weapons, of rockets that have coming straight from Russia, supposedly an arms shipment that the Russian made to the Syrians, somehow, mysteriously, got diverted to Hezbollah and Anah Hezbollah. Russia has its fingerprints all over the Middle East and really all over the world. We'll get to some other examples in a minute. Well, one of the stories that broke today in the Wall Street Journal today was that Russia is also providing the Houthis with targeting data. So they're giving them satellite information about ships going through and giving them coordinates and helping them attack the shipping lanes so as to disrupt shipping. In exchange, of course, Russia got a promise from the Houthis not to attack Russian ships. So Russia is helping the Houthis disrupt shipping lanes. Finland has had a suspicious increase in acts of sabotage, which they are fairly convinced that Russia is behind. That not only is Russia engaged in kind of propaganda campaigns and influence campaigns all over Europe, including in Finland, but Russia is literally has people on the ground committing acts of sabotage, train lines, infrastructure, other infrastructure, instrumentation. This, in addition to, as I said, the false information, fake news, but also the hacking, the cyber attacks all over Europe. Generally, Russia right now is on this campaign of destabilizing the West, of doing whatever it can to destabilize the West. And, arguably it's successful. There's good reason to believe that Russia is funding a lot of the far-right political parties, including in places like Finland, anti-immigration parties, nationalist parties, anti-EU parties, and generally parties that support Russia and that support the EU helping, and NATO stopping to help Ukraine. So Russia is active in all those fronts. It's active in the American election, I'm sure, but it's really active all over the world. Now, one example of this, well, let's get to Moldova in a second. We'll get to Moldova in a second. I just want to say one more thing about Russia. It does appear like Russia has brought in North Korean troops, so troops from North Korea, to fight at the front against the Ukrainians. It's not clear how many troops yet are at the front, but the Ukrainians expect that within the next few weeks they will be confronting North Korean troops in Ukraine, on Ukrainian land, fighting Ukrainian troops, although some of the North Koreans supposedly are in the Kursk area where Ukraine is in Russia, on Russian land. Supposedly North Korea has provided both special forces, but also regular troops, and anywhere from, talk about 1,500 to 30,000 Ukrainian troops are going to be involved. So it could be one division, it could be two divisions, certainly special forces. So exactly hard to tell. Now we know North Korea has been providing ammunition to the Russians and weapons to the Russians. Now they're actually providing bodies. South Korea is monitoring this very carefully. They have said in the past that if North Koreans send troops, then the South Koreans will start sending weapons to the Ukrainians. I think they're ready to do that. We will see in the days to come if South Korea lives up to its word. South Korea has a lot of good weapons. South Korea is a very, very technologically advanced weapons manufacturer. They have a fantastic jet plane. They have a fighter plane. They have tanks. They have artillery. They have, I'm sure, electronic weapons. And Korea probably has a very, very robust capacity to build drones and very sophisticated drones. So it'll be interesting to see if South Korea does start supplying the Ukrainians with some of their weapon systems. That would be important for the Ukrainians. Finally, the BRICS summit has ended in Russia. It was in Russia. 30 countries represented, 20 heads of state, a lot of talking. Not much action, nothing really to report, nothing new, nothing breakthrough, no new currency, no new payment system that is embraced by everybody. Indeed, a lot of reluctance on the part of a lot of countries to abandon the dollar and to shift. Okay, one of the major operations of the Russians over the last few months, and certainly over the last few days, was in Moldova. Now, for those of you who don't know where Moldova is, I didn't prepare a map, I probably should have. But Moldova is, if you go west from Russia, you would cross Ukraine. If you go on the south border along the Black Sea, you would cross Ukraine. You would cross Odessa in Ukraine, and the next country up would be Moldova. So Moldova, and then on the other side of Moldova will be Romania. Moldova is relatively thin and long. It does touch the Black Sea, and Moldova has been historically part of kind of the Russian sphere of influence. Moldova has Russian troops in Moldova. There is a section of Moldova that is controlled, if you will, by Russia. It's had governments that have been very pro-Russia. But over the last few years, and certainly given the attack on Ukraine, Moldova has shifted to a much more pro-Western positioning. And it is now ready to join the EU and become a true Western country and abandon kind of the old Eastern European Soviet model. And there was an election 3 days ago in which Moldova had to choose to join the EU or not. Russia took this as an election basically on whether Russia was going to have influence on Moldova or not. And they spent huge amounts of money trying to influence this election. Propaganda, but it turns out also corruption. So there's a Russian oligarch who lives in Israel, I think, or part-time in Israel, who has, I think he's also a Moldovan citizen, who spent, I can't remember how many hundreds of millions of dollars, basically paying Moldovans to vote against joining the EU. And this is now well documented. There are now banks that have been implicated in the scheme to buy votes. They suspect that about 300,000 votes were bought, literally cash payments. Now, in spite of all this, in spite of the 300,000 votes, in spite of the cash payments, in spite of the propaganda, the intimidation, and everything else, Moldova did vote to join the EU by a tiny margin. Now, if you take out some of the Russian influence, then it wouldn't be. The EU has promised to expedite its admission, and it does look like Moldova will join the EU, which is another defeat, strategic defeat for the Kremlin, for Putin. It now basically makes all of Europe a part of the EU or NATO or both, with the exception of Ukraine and, of course, Russia itself and Belarus, right? Belarus, which is basically a part of Russia. So a defeat for Putin, but it was close, very close, much closer than anybody expected, and that the polls showed because of this, just the outright, explicit corruption. I mean, there's literally videos of people asking, I mean, this is how stupid they are, right? Asking people at the polls where they can collect the cash. They voted, they were promised cash, where they can collect the cash. Next up is Georgia, the country, not the state, although the state is voting as well. The country. The country of Georgia, has been very pro-Europe, very interested in joining Europe, very pro-European Union traditionally. And yet, over the last few years, they have the Georgian Dream Party, I think it's called, which has aligned itself since the invasion of Ukraine with Russia. I think they basically got the message that if they don't align with Russia, they're next. And they fear that the West is too weak. The oligarch who kind of runs this party, who used to be not so friendly to Russia, has become super friendly to Russia and is basically pulling all the strings. Anyway, Georgia is up for elections in 2 days, I think, this weekend, to determine a new parliament and a new government, which will determine whether Georgia goes pro-Euro, European Union, or pro-Russia. It is maybe the most important election in Georgia's history. Georgia, which is a country that for a few years there embraced free markets in a way that no other country in the world in the 21st century has done, could be heading back towards complete domination by the Russians, which would be tragic and horrible and sad. And I've got a lot of friends in Georgia, just terrible. The election there are important. Russia is, and this oligarch who is in Russia's pocket for some reason, spending a lot of money to try to make sure that doesn't happen. It's also very, very possible that they will rig the elections, that the elections won't be free anyway, that they'll cheat, because in Moldova, the government is pro-EU. In Georgia, the government is pro-Russia and wants to stay in government, and so they have control over what happens. So very scary. Russia is definitely taking advantage of the West's weakness. It looks into the future and basically it thinks no matter who wins, Russia is stronger. If Kamala wins, it's the same as they've had until now, which is weakness and Russia influence growing. If Trump wins, even better, I think, for them, because, Trump has indicated that he will do what Putin wants. So, America weakness, Russia gets more powerful, gets more aggressive, gets more ambitious. I mean, the thing holding Russia back is it's poor and it's weak militarily. But nobody with real power will engage with them. But they are weak militarily. All right, you want to do tariffs? What do you think? All right, let's do a little tariffs. We'll see how long you last, how much patience we have for Patrick Wynn-David talking about tariffs. Let's see. There we go. There's Patrick. Now, I don't know how many of you know Patrick Wynn-David. He is a very successful podcaster. I think he made his reputation with the art of negotiation. He is considered a master negotiator. He knows how to negotiate stuff. He's written about this. He's got a podcast on it. He's made a fortune. He's very, very wealthy, very, very successful, very passionate, very charismatic, very articulate. You'll see the passion. I'll give him credit. He reached out to me a few years ago. It's been a while. And actually came out to an Objectivist conference and interviewed me on stage and put it up as part of his podcast, which was a lot of fun. And it was a good interview. I thought it was a good interview. I don't think he particularly thought it was a good interview and it wasn't viewed by, you know, it wasn't like the millions of views that some of his videos get. So he's never really invited me back. I don't think, but he has. But you know, he's huge. He's got 1.1 million. No, sorry, 6.1 million subscribers on YouTube and 1.1 million followers on Twitter. So this guy's big time, big time, right? And a lot of people admire him. A lot of people following. A lot of people listen to kind of what he has to say. So he has a video on tariffs. Trump's tariff ban explained. Does it destroy or help this economy? So I thought, okay, this guy's smart. He's articulate. He's passionate. Let's hear the best case they have for tariffs. Let's do it. Now, let me just say right up front, it's unbelievably disappointing because it's not the best case for tariff. I could make a better case for tariffs. It's like, I don't know. You'll see, I mean, how bad of a case it is. He's not an economist. I mean, it's worse. He has no understanding of basic economics. He's got a Trumpist understanding of economics, which is no understanding of economics. He's worse than Trump in some sense. So bear with me. I mean, I'm sorry. It is what it is. But I want to show you this because this is the attempts that they make. This is who they have. They have a few pseudo-economists who make these arguments, but it's a businessman trying to make the argument for tariffs. So let's listen, and I will stop him every few seconds to critique it. But let's try and follow his argument.
There's all these arguments over tariffs. Mark Cuban, no, it's it's the worst thing, you should never do it. Trump, my favorite word in the dictionary is tariffs. Everybody's talking about trade deficits, trade surplus. How the hell does this thing work out? I'm going to explain to you tariffs in a way that you can explain to anybody moving forward. You ready? Let's just say.
Okay, so here it is. This is explanation of tariffs in a way that you can explain to anybody. This is explanation. Wow.
I am an accountant and I need referrals. I want you to give me clients because I need to grow my business. Let's say you sell auto insurance and we meet each other. We're friends. We're networking at a local Chamber of Commerce event. We say, hey man, you give me one referral, I'll give you a referral. You want to kind of share some clients together? Let's do it. No problem. So all of a sudden, a month later, I've given you 5 referrals. You've given me 0. I have a referral deficit of -5. You have a referral surplus of +5. Trade deficit, trade surplus. You get the idea?
No. Why do people who are this ignorant about economics have the audacity? I'm sorry, Patrick and David, you be nice to me, but where do you get the audacity to try to explain this when you clearly have no understanding of what you're talking about? So let's break this down. So he's saying trade is like referrals, but it's not. It's not, right? Referrals are potentially a trade, but they might not be. That's the point. That's why there's a referral deficit. I refer people to you, but you don't refer people to me. We haven't really traded. I've given you stuff. I haven't got anything back from you. But that's not even close to what a trade deficit is, because a trade deficit is a difference in trade, not in referrals, in trade. What does that mean? What does a trade deficit mean? I'll use my grocery store example, which I always use. I go to the grocery store. I buy stuff. They get money. I get goods. Who's lost here? Who's worse off here? Well, actually nobody, because I got your goods, which is what I wanted. I gave up money for it, which is what I didn't want. It's worth less to me than the goods. That's why I did the trade. You got money and you gave goods. We're both better off because we traded. We didn't promise to do referrals. We literally traded. Only in a barter economy do we trade goods for goods. We live in a sophisticated economy where we don't trade goods for goods. I don't walk into the grocery store to buy my groceries with, I don't know, the iPhone I built today, that I made today, and I'm going to change my iPhone for my groceries. It's not how the world works. We have money to mediate, to make it possible for me to be building iPhones and selling them over there, get a salary from Apple, and then go into the grocery store and buy stuff with that money. And the grocery store can do with that money whatever they want. So when an American buys stuff from China, he got stuff, China got dollars. In Patrick Benavid's example, one guy got referrals and one got nothing. So nothing. He got nothing. But where's the nothing in the trade deficit? What Patrick Benavid is implying is that the nothing is, that is, if I'm buying Chinese goods, but China doesn't buy goods for me, then that's the nothing. But wait a minute. China gave me goods, and I gave them money. Where's the nothingness here? We engaged in a trade. We both benefited. Now, it turns out China now has dollars. Now, what's China going to do with those dollars? And we'll get to the China thing as well. What's China going to do with the dollars? What do you do with dollars? Well, they're eager to buy some stuff from America. There's a trade deficit, so they don't buy a lot of stuff from America for a variety of reasons. Or what else can they do with the dollars? Well, they invest them in America. They buy bonds, or they buy stuff elsewhere around the world. They might buy oil from Saudi Arabia with those dollars. And then the dollars go to Saudi Arabia. And what does Saudi Arabia do with the dollars? They maybe buy some goods from America, and maybe they use those dollars to buy some stuff from Europeans. And then Europeans have those dollars. And what do the Europeans do with those dollars? They might buy American bonds for their pension plans. But every time one of those transactions happen, every single time one of those transactions happens, it's a win-win. Whereas in the referral business, it's a win, I wouldn't say lose, but it's a win zero. It's a win neutral. It has nothing to do with trade deficits. Referrals are as far away from trade. I mean, they're far away from trade. I don't want to say they're completely different. And why use referrals? When I go to the grocery store, I give them money, I get groceries. I've got a trade deficit with the grocery store. How is that bad? I don't understand how that's bad. I don't understand how that relates to zero referrals. It's just a stupid example, a dumb example. Now, I don't think he's dumb. I don't think his staff is dumb. But I think he thinks his viewers are dumb because it's so transparent. I mean, if somebody on my chat has an idea of where this even comes from and how this makes sense, please let me know. But as somebody who, I won't call myself an economist because I'm not, but is economist adjacent as a finance PhD, this is like, I mean, what grade would you give Patrick Ben-David on this analogy for a trade deficit? I'd give him a straight down the line F, not even a D minus. This is an F. This is a complete F. I don't know who his target audience is. People who listen. The 6.1 million subscribers to his YouTube channel. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's mind-boggling. All right, let's listen to some more.
Now, think about it if a year later, 5 years later, you and I are giving referrals to each other. I sit down and I look at the numbers and I said, wait a minute, Johnny, I've given you 1,100 more referrals than you've given to me. Do I look like a dummy to you? Why do I keep giving you referrals and you give me nothing in return? You're like, I take care of your clients when you send them my way. What's wrong with that? I show them, like, I want to make some commission. I'm not making any money on this deal. It doesn't matter. I'm taking care of your clients. That's exactly the relationship between US and China.
No, it's not. There's no referrals here. I mean, his referral example is absolutely right. Why is one taking advantage of the other? Why is one benefiting and the other one's not reciprocating? There's no, the point of the referrals is there's no trade going on. But with China and America, there is a trade happening. Now, I do want to know that America doesn't trade with China, and China does not trade with America. Individuals in China and individuals in America trade with one another. Now, by the way, China is a bad example because there are all kinds of complications with China. They steal IP and they cheat and they do all kinds of things. So let's take Germany. Germany has a huge trade deficit with the trade surplus with the United States. Germany, right? But Germany and the United States don't trade. German companies trade with American companies. German individuals trade with American individuals. Americans go into a car dealership and they buy a BMW, and that money goes to the bottom line of a German company in Germany. But not the German government and the US government trade. And there are no referrals here. When I get my BMW, I used to have an Audi, German too, then I bought a German car and I've given up dollars. I'm better off of that. Germany's better off. The German guy who sold me the car is better off. We're both better off. I have a trade deficit with Germany. Who cares? Why does it matter? From a macro, from a micro, from any perspective, it doesn't matter. So no, this is not analogous to trade between the US and China, which doesn't exist because only individuals trade.
So you may be saying, Pat, why 1,100 referrals? What's the big deal? Here's what the trade deficit of US with all the other countries worldwide is. If each referral equaled $1 billion, our trade deficit is 1.1 trillion against the rest of the world. We've given the rest of the world $1.1 trillion of business more than they've given us. What the heck?
That's not true. It's just an unbelievable lie. I mean, it's not a lie because it's too stupid to be a lie. We've given the world $1.1 trillion in exchange for more than $1.1 trillion worth of goods. If I gave money to Germany and didn't get the car, then I should be upset. Why am I giving them money? I didn't get the car. I'm not getting anything from them. But I got the car. That makes all the difference. I actually engaged in trade with them. Trade deficit, not giveaway deficit. Somebody explain this to me. Yeah, I mean, this is worse than Trump. Trump doesn't get what trade is. He thinks it's a losing proposition. Here, he won't even engage with the concept of trade. Referrals. Referrals are potential trade, but they might not be. They might be exploitative. One does them and the other doesn't. I mean, it's one thing for him to think this, but then he has a whole production team. Nobody called him on this. Nobody said, wait a minute, we don't give the world $1.1 trillion. We trade for stuff. And by the way, what would you rather have? I know what I'd have. Dollars or stuff? Stuff. Stuff. Stuff is much more valuable than dollars. Can't do much with dollars except buy stuff. The only reason they have dollars is to buy stuff or to use them for investment. Yeah, and one of Friedman says, not only that, but if we buy tools, and we do buy a lot of tools from Germany, Germany's very good at tool making, then we use those tools to increase our productivity. So it's not just that we have consumption goods, but we're trading for productive goods. I mean, you can't buy better fine tool making than German tool making. Yeah, so, God, I don't know. It's frustrating. I shouldn't have to do this.
What the hell are we doing in America? Is this what it is? And we just give everybody business? And by the way, guess what country in the world has the highest trade surplus? Who has taken more referrals than anybody else in the world? What country do you think that is? It's China.
Why? Because China has produced the most stuff. It sells the most stuff. It hasn't taken referrals. Nobody's given China referrals. It produces stuff, and we exchange our dollars for their stuff. Why is that a bad thing? For China or for us? Now, again, China's complicated because there are all kinds of other bad things, like they're building a military to oppose us. But how is this a bad thing? All right. I don't see any point in really continuing here. He goes on. He actually brings him Adam Smith, but it's just this level. And I just wanted to give you a sense of this. We've only done 1:52 in a 14-minute video. I just want to give you a sense of the level, just the quality of the argument of the pro-tariff side. Again, this is not a nobody. This is a big deal. This is a 6.1 million subscriber channel. Isn't it amazing? 6.1 million. I have 35,000. or sorry, 38,000. I'm closing in on 40. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty. It says something about the world, doesn't it? That if you actually know economics and can explain these things and advocate for sound economic policies and can talk about economics, I think, coherently. You could disagree with me, but I'm not incoherent and I'm not giving analogies that are completely nonsensical. You get 40,000 followers, and if you are a complete whack job when it comes to this stuff, you get 6.1. Now, I don't think he made his 6.1 million followers from talking about economics. Then my view of the world would be even more dismal than it is. He made that from talking about negotiating or whatever, and from interviewing important people like me. But he should lose some followers for this. Don't you think? I don't know. I mean, it's really bad. It's really bad. And the rest is no better. It just goes on and on and on. So I'm gonna skip this. But this, of course, is the problem with. And happy to if you guys have. I'm curious if there's anybody out there listening to the show. They're always awesome people, though they don't show up on the chat anymore. I think they're afraid I'll block them. But if there are people out there who think tariffs are a good idea, and they can find a video of somebody explaining why they're a good idea, who does a good job, then send it to me. I'd love to be able to engage with better ideas than this. There've got to be better ideas than this, maybe. And let me just say, yes, China steals IP. There's an easy way to prevent that. If you're a private company, don't go to China. If you go to China and you negotiate your IP away, which is what most of these companies do, that's on you. That's on you. To the extent that China hacks its way and literally steals, it should pay a price. The U.S. government should do something about that. That is an act of war. China subsidizes its goods. It's not fair. It's not fair. Yeah, they do subsidize their goods. So do we, by the way. Huge subsidies, and only increasing. Under Biden, they increased a lot. They're likely to increase again under Trump. So, yeah, they subsidize, we subsidize. Maybe they subsidize more than we do, but it's not like America can stand on principle against subsidies. I mean, just think about farm subsidies, which we've been doing since the Great Depression. So we don't exactly have that moral high ground here when it comes to subsidies. But okay, they subsidize. Why shouldn't I buy subsidized Chinese goods? It's true. Some American businesses will suffer because they won't be able to compete with the Chinese manufacturers subsidized. But a lot of American businesses will benefit. And no rights of Americans have been violated. So why would the government intervene? If China wants to subsidize their businesses, let them do it. We know, or should know, I know, some of you know, that the subsidies only hurt China, don't really help them in the long run. We get cheaper stuff. China's an enemy. And the stronger it gets, the richer it gets, the bigger weapons it builds, and the more aggressive it will become vis-a-vis America. Good point. It's an issue. It's an issue. We need to be very, very careful about China. So yes, ban exports of certain sensitive goods to China, although they get through anyway. There's a black market. You can't really stop it, but you can at least slow it down. If China becomes aggressive and clearly, unequivocally an enemy of the United States, then yeah, embargo it, boycott it, ban trade. For example, if you're an American and you trade with a North Korean, you will go to jail. If China is truly an enemy, unequivocally an enemy, then we shouldn't trade with it. Absolutely, because it helps them. But first we have to define what that means and when that threshold happens. The goods in China are made by slave labor. That's true in some cases, sadly. Certainly in Western China, there are slave camps and prison camps and horrible stuff happening over there. Not the government's business. Me, you, yes. I mean, you should hesitate before you buy stuff from China. Where's this made? Who makes it? Is the government getting the revenue or other people? See, I won't buy anything from Cuba because in Cuba, everything goes to the government. There's literally no private property. In China, most stuff we buy from China goes to Chinese people. The people who actually built it, make it. So I don't mind trading with China. Now, if I knew that a good was made by slave labor, I wouldn't buy it. So it's complicated. Trade is complicated. Coming up with principles to guide trade is complicated. But put aside China for a minute. Everything Patrick Van der Vid just said is applicable to Germany. And I have no problem buying anything from Germany. They were allies. They're not stealing American IP. They're not an enemy. They don't have slave labor. They have a horrible history, but not a horrible present. So why wouldn't I buy stuff? Why wouldn't I buy stuff from Germany? Because there's a trade deficit, and you're giving them referrals, and then you're not getting any from them. How stupid can you really get? Really? I'm giving them dollars, and I'm getting cool stuff from them. Win-win. And Sen Mi says, how does one find out where the money goes and what's built by slaves? Rand didn't invest in the stock market for a long time because of how much effort would have to go into vetting the companies. No, I mean, Rand didn't invest in the stock market because she didn't want to take risk with her money. She invested in the safest thing she could, which was U.S. government bonds. In spite of the fact that you could argue those bond money went to government spending. Rand did not have any problem with vetting every company that she was going to invest in. That was not the consideration, as far as I know, of why she didn't invest in the stock market. It was all an issue of risk. She knew what poverty was, and she worked hard to make the money, and she needed to be able to live off that money. And she invested in the safest investment she could. I've met her investment manager. I don't think he's alive anymore. But I met on several occasions, I met with her investment manager, and he told me what the logic was, and it had nothing to do with vetting companies. You don't know. Where the money goes, you can tell, because if you know anything about China, you know that China has millions of private companies. Tax rates in China are lower than they are in the United States. Now, some companies are owned by the government, but most of the stuff you buy from China is not. Most of the stuff you buy from China are private companies. I wouldn't buy electronics from China, certain electronics, because those companies are likely to, or more likely to be, although I do have electronics from China, but those companies are more likely to be particularly advanced electronics owned or related to the government. But the money still goes to the investors. There's a stock market in China. Their dividends are paid. Salaries are meted out. Profits are made. They're billionaires in China. And they're not billionaires like in Russia, all government favors. They're billionaires who build businesses that are worth billions. If you go to China, you can see that China has a vast private economy. I agree with Wanda Freeman. I wouldn't deal with Huawei. I wouldn't buy one of their phones. They clearly, if you do the research, influence. But it's hard to tell what is built by slave labor, for example. And then you have to decide, am I going to do the research? How much time am I willing to do that research? And is it worth it? And for mostly, the answer for me is it's not worth it. So for me, this is just life. I'll buy whatever. If I know a good, if for some reason I discover that a good is made by slave labor, I won't buy it anymore. iPhones, my favorite product in the world, is made where? Well, they're certainly put together in China. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with Foxconn, which is actually a Taiwanese company, but they assemble the iPhones in China. And they make private profits, and they give private employees wages, and the employees are not slaves. So I have no problem with the fact that most Apple products are made in China. Fewer, they're diversifying their supply chain, but they still are. So, all right, let's move on. I thought I would spend more time on that, but it's so silly that I don't think it's worth it. All right, before we go to Super Chat, we'll go to Super Chat soon, promise. I do have 3 songs that I want to review quickly, and then we'll do Super Chat. These 3 songs are all from John Glue. These are songs that he asked me to review a long, long time ago, so these are old debts that I owe. I still have Fork in the Road, which is a short story. I still have 2 TV episodes. And yesterday, I think John gave us 3 new songs to review. So I've got the 3 new songs that John gave us yesterday. So, but these are the 3 that he gave us a while back. And they include, so the first one is, and as I've told you before, I don't play the songs because it's a copyright issue. Hopefully you know these songs, but here they are. The first one is How Far I'll Go from the, these are all 3 Disney movies. They're all 3 Disney movies. There were 4 new songs yesterday. You're right, Mary Eileen. 4 new songs yesterday. How Far I'll Go from Moana from Disney. And I like the song. I haven't seen the movie, but I like the song. It's got a traditional Disney feel to it. It's got a Disney melody. It's got that romantic, sweeping music that goes along with it. It's fun. It's about this girl who, you know, she's not allowed to go out into the sea, but she wants to know what's over the horizon. She will not settle for just what's here on land. She wants to know what's beyond the horizon over there. She's an adventurer. She says, I've been staring at the edge of the water long as I can remember, never really knowing why. I wish I could be the perfect daughter, but I come back to the water no matter how hard I try. She's ambitious. She comes back to the water. The water's adventure. The water's excitement. The water will take her way out there. Every turn I take, every trail I track, every path I make, every road leads back to the place I know where I cannot go, though I long to. See the line where the sky meets the sea, the horizon. It calls me, and no one knows how far it goes. If the wind in my sail on the sea stays behind me, one day I'll know. So it's great. It's typical Disney, uplifting, ambitious, striving, usually women, right? Usually it's women who are striving and successful and ambitious, and in the Disney songs, in the Disney universe, it reminds me of Little Mermaid, or it could be Beauty and the Beast. And the music is very similar to, I think, Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. So really nice, really uplifting. It goes on, I know everyone on this island seems so happy on this island. Everything is by design. I know everyone on this island has a role in this island, so maybe I can roll with mine. So maybe I can just fit in. I can just do what is expected from me. I'll just do what everybody expects me. She says I can lead with pride. I can make us strong. I'll be satisfied if I play along. But the voice inside me sings a different song. What is wrong with me? See the light as it shines on the sea? It's blinding, but no one knows how deep it goes. And it seems like it's calling out to me. So come find me and let me know what's beyond that line. Will I cross that line? See the line where the sky meets the sea? It calls me. So, yeah, I mean, that's great. It teaches that ambition, that striving. My guess is the movie is fun and has kind of the same kind of themes. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the song. There was another interpretation of a song that I found, which is more hip-hop-y. Didn't like as much. I like the traditional Disney kind of soundtrack of the song. That I liked. Second song was A Surface Pressure from Encanto, also Disney. This is less melodic, less modern, more modern, less traditional, more modern. And this is about the burden of expectations. Again, so in terms of theme, quite good. How do I... it's pressure, like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Pressure on her to be this perfect child, or to be this perfect sister, this perfect whatever. This movie I actually saw. I didn't particularly like it. I don't remember exactly why I didn't like it. But I think the theme was a good theme. I didn't like the way it played out. Under the surface, I hide my nerves and it worsens. I worry something is going to hurt us. Under the surface, the ship doesn't swerve as it heard. How big the iceberg is. Under the surface, I think about my purpose. Can I somehow preserve this? It's got a certain rhythm. It's got a certain rhythm, a nice rhythm to it. Again, it's a song about ambition and about the pressure that comes with it. So I like it. Not as good as the other one. All right, and then the third one, Knowing What I Know from Wish, which is another Disney movie. I didn't like this one. Not a lot of melody, not very interesting sound. You know, it's about you be deceived. Magnifico is not the man he claims to be. He's more vicious than I could have ever comprehended. When I made a wish and star came down, this is not what I expected or intended. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the song. I don't like the song, and I don't like I didn't like the beat, the melody. It's very beat driven, very modern. You know, everything now is hip hop. Everything now is beat driven. It's boom, 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 boom. There's no melody. There's no drama. There's no sophistication. So not a favorite. So Monel was the one I liked of those. So hopefully, John, that is satisfactory. Oh, next up is one by Metallica. I don't like Metallica, so Shazbot knows I don't like Metallica, so we'll try it out. This is an anti-war theme that Shazbot has got going, and we're also going to do, I guess there's a YouTube video and lyrics and all of that, so that's good. And then we've got Blackadder, and we've got Star Trek Next Generation, and then we got John's 4 new songs, and I think that's it, other than the short story Folks in the Road. So let me know if I missed anything, guys, if I missed any of the songs or movies or anything like that. All right, let's jump into the Super Chat. Remind you, we're because of Rando, we've done pretty well today, so we're just like $37 short of our goal, so maybe somebody can come in with two $20 questions, and we'll get there and we'll be done. Or maybe we can just do $5 stickers, 4 $5 stickers. No, sorry, 8 $5 stickers, and we're done. So, let us start with Randall. Randall says, remember, this is first Super Chat. Hey, Yaron, I would like to thank you for putting on the show. I'm a regular listener for a couple of years now, and it's time I provide value for value. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Randall. I have learned a lot, especially about economics of free markets, and you have inspired me to sell these ideas to the people around me. In Australia, big grocery chains and banks are making higher profits than normal. According to lefties, you mentioned how a few months ago that government spending contributes to this. Can you please expand on that, as I find it hard to justify to people these corporations make profits? Well, I mean, let's start with, why shouldn't they make profits? Of course they should make profits. They're providing a service. They're providing a vital service. They're bringing together, I don't know, all your daily shopping needs into one building. They're refrigerating it. They're selecting it. They're picking out the good products and the bad products. They're displaying only what qualifies for them as good, or only the things that they think you want and demand. They're organizing it in a convenient way for you. They're putting it all in one place so that you can come in, buy your shopping once a week. In the old days of small grocery stores, you would have to go to 3 or 4 different ones to get everything you need. So grocery stores provide an enormous service. So they should get compensated for that, and that is a profit. Now, there are periods in which they make higher profits, and there are other periods where, for a variety of reasons, they might make lower profits. Inflation actually can cause, for a short period of time, grocery stores to make higher profits. Because let's say they buy their goods. Let's say the grocery store's bought $100 worth of goods, and it expects to sell them for $115, making a $15 profit. But the government, in its wisdom, has just distributed a bunch of money to people. So whereas before in the economy there was X amount of money, now there's 2X. They've doubled the money supply. They've given people a lot of money. People feel rich. in a sense, they come into the grocery store and say, I'm willing to pay more than the prices listed here because I have a lot of money. And basically, they bid up the prices. So the grocery store might have bought an inventory at 100, but now, because people are willing to pay a lot of money because they got free money from the government, they are bidding it up, and now maybe the grocery store is selling it for $125. They're making $10 more. Their profits now are $25. Now, when they go out into the marketplace again to buy new products to bring back into the store, it turns out all those products are more expensive now because grocery stores generally have made more money. They can now afford to buy from producers more at a higher price, and therefore they bid up those prices. So now the prices of the products are higher that they bring into the store. And at some point, when inflation stops, it goes down, they're buying products at a very high price, which they cannot sell, and their profits will come down. But you see, early on, particularly in inflation times, yeah, businesses can make money before. It depends on how the money is filtered in the economy and where the prices are bid up first. So, grocery stores should make a profit, and they should make whatever profit they can. It's their job. They're not there to provide you with a public service. They're not a nonprofit. They're a for-profit business trying to make money. And if the government in its stupidity hands out cash, as all governments did during COVID, and by handing out that cash, people are flush. They drive up prices across the economy. There's going to be a window, a period in which some businesses, not all, some businesses make more money. And then when inflation starts coming down, they stop making money. They make less money. It really amazes me. You know, sometimes oil prices shoot up and oil companies make a lot of money. Suddenly they have windfall profits. And then prices collapse and oil companies start losing money. And what are these windfall losses? And nobody cares when they lose money. And there are cases where grocery stores lose money. Probably during COVID, when supply chains were tight and when they had when people didn't have money yet, the government hadn't given them the money yet, and yet the grocery stores had to buy stuff from their suppliers, and their suppliers were tight, so they were selling at higher prices. But the grocery couldn't pass the price on to the consumer because the consumer didn't have any money. Some grocery stores probably didn't make money. Anybody feel sorry for them then? And, you know, banks go through periods where they make a lot of money and periods where they lose money. It depends on the yield curve, on interest rates. It depends on whether loans are going under or not, often all caused by government policy. So if the government is driving up interest rates, people can't pay their mortgages, or government has driven the economy into recession, now people can't pay their mortgages, and now banks lose money. Anybody feel sorry for the banks then? So why do we get really, really, really mad at them? Mad at them when they make money, because the circumstances are such and the market is such that money can be made. But both banking and grocery chains in Australia are hyper-competitive. So over the long run, they can't make a lot of money. Imagine a grocery store, it's keeping prices high, because what the hell? I'm making a lot of money. I used to make $15 cents on every dollar. Now I'm making 25 cents on every dollar. I'm going to keep them high. Well, what will happen is the grocery store across the street will go, I can get a lot of market share. I can get some of the other grocery store's customers by lowering the prices a little bit. So I'll lower them, and I'll still make good money. I'll lower them and make 24 cents instead of the 25 cents that they make on every dollar. Well, the first grocery store looks at that and says, wait a minute, they lowered their prices. All my customers are going over there. That's not good. I need my customers to come over here. So I'll lower it to 23 cents. And then they'll lower it to 22 and 21, and they'll all lower until we reach an equilibrium, some kind of equilibrium where they make just enough profit to be able to run the business and to be able to give a return on the capital invested. And they'll probably stabilize around what it was before the inflation bout at 15. And that's how markets work. That's how markets work. Competition drives down profits. And grocery stores and banks are highly competitive businesses. And particularly banks definitely go through periods in which they literally lose money. So hopefully, Randall, that answers the question. If it doesn't, I'm happy to take a follow-up question to kind of clarify anything that I might have said that might not have been clear. Liam says, do people envy what they gave up on? So many people settle for mediocrity. When they see someone exuding pride, happiness, certainty, financial flourishing, they become anxious and insecure and lash out. I mean, I think that's right. I mean, that sounds right. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I think that's a big source of envy. But see, envy, I think that's how envy starts, right? But envy is kind of when you've really given up on your own life. And when what happens is you project outwards in terms of hatred of other people. And you hate their success. You hate their flourishing. Not just a person, but much more generally everybody who's successful. But yeah, I think it comes fundamentally from an insecure place, from having given up, from a place of accepting your own mediocrity and losing the ambition, losing the striving. But that's a good question to ask one of the psychologists when they're on. Justin, for the proposed Ayn Rand Center in Austin, how about naming the cafe Ayn's Grind? I'll propose that to the committee, naming rooms in the new building. Moving ahead, guys, fundraising is going great for the new Ayn Rand Center, Ayn Rand building in Austin, Texas. I do expect that late next year we will start building. We will start working on the site. The architect is working aggressively on the design, finishing up stuff. We got to get permits. We got to find contractors. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. But I think sometime next year we will break ground and start on this. And by 2028, there will be an Ayn Rand Center, Ayn Rand Museum, Ayn Rand Archives, Ayn Rand facility, which is going to be pretty amazing and pretty beautiful in Austin, Texas, not far from the University of Texas in Austin. Thank you, Justin. Shazbat, reminder, you also have a Black Sabbath song and 2 monologues from Andor to review. By the way, I like your negative reviews more than your positive ones because I learn more from them. All right. I need to find those. Okay, I will look for them. I'm copy-pasting this. Thanks for reminding me, Shazbat. They were, for some reason, not on the list, but I will look for them, and if I can't find them, I'll come back to you with the to give me the what it was exactly. But I'll find it. Whoops, didn't mean to press that button. Okay, Justin says, perhaps profits could be described as the metric by which the non-input cost secret sauce is measured. The non-input cost secret sauce is measured. Justin's on a roll today. I don't know what that means. Profits is a measure of the value that's being provided. The more value provided, the higher the profit. The more unique value, because if somebody else is providing the same value, profits will be low. The more unique you are, the greater the profit. And there are times where the economy does this or the prices do that, where you make more profits. That's not a bad thing. But there are other times when the economy does this and the government does that and things go this way and you make less profit. And on average, grocery stores don't make high profits. And on average, banks don't make huge profits. But there might be periods where they will, compensated by periods where they don't. All right. Let us see. Thank you, guys. We've made our target for the second hour, and we probably won't go into a third hour because it's late. All right, Andrew, what is wrong with the protectionist view that a trade deficit is a sign of a consumerist economy that simply buys and doesn't make stuff? If we spend more on goods than we sell goods, don't we have a hollowed out economy? I mean, this is the problem with this view. Where do I get the money to buy the stuff from? Like, I don't make anything. All I do is consume. You make everything. Like, China makes everything. We Americans make nothing. Where do we get the money to buy the Chinese stuff from? And we have to get the money from somewhere as individuals. Now, it's true the government could just hand it to us. But if the government just handed us our money, then the money would be worthless. The money would be worthless, and China wouldn't want it. So the reality is that we must make something. Now, it turns out that America and the UK and certain other Western economies, really most Western economies, what we make are primarily services, not manufacturing. People don't like that. Services. Ugh. But what is services? So, for example, we don't make chips in the United States. I'm talking about microchips, microprocessing chips. Not many anyway. That's made in Taiwan and South Korea, and we have a huge trade deficit with them in chips. How do we get the money to buy the chips? We get the money to buy the chips from the fact that we design them. So the United States, engineers in the United States actually design the chips. And then we basically hire the people in Taiwan to make them for us. Like the iPhone. How do we buy, the iPhones are assembled in China. And indeed, most of the components inside the iPhone are not made in the US. I mean, maybe the glass is glass from here, but it could be Samsung. Some of this stuff is Samsung. So all kinds. Qualcomm designs the chip in the US, but they're made in Taiwan. What's the value added that America provides? Well, design, planning, including, by the way, the design of the supply chain, marketing. So it's not the case that we have a hollowed out economy. Because hollowed out economies collapse. They can't survive for very long at all. Because they don't make anything. So nobody wants to sell them stuff. Because nobody wants their currency. Nobody wants a dollar if the dollar doesn't stand for anything productive. But the reality is, and this, I know it's hard for people to understand, the United States is the strongest, most robust economy in the world today. we produce more stuff than anybody. Now, the stuff we produce is not widgets. It's ideas. It's innovation. It's plans. We provide services. Software, by the way. Software is a service. All those programmers in Silicon Valley are not manufacturing workers. They're service workers. Now, it's not just in electronics. It's also in biotech, in pharmaceuticals. It's also in finance, in business consulting, in supply chain management. And then, because we make all those kind of stuff, we are also rich enough so that we can provide services like restaurants and a certain expertise about restaurants and, chain restaurants where we might open all over the world and the expertise about how to create chain restaurants. And so we provide all kinds of services. So now remember, when somebody in China sells an American something, they get dollars. They have to do something with those dollars. And there are only two things they can do with those dollars ultimately. They can buy something, ultimately from the US, which means we make something. Now, maybe what they buy from the US is an idea, not a thing, but that's even better and non-tangible. Maybe it's a piece of software, like a Microsoft product, not a thing, like a widget. The second thing they can do with the dollar is invest it. But why would they invest their dollars in the United States if the United States wasn't producing anything? Like, you wouldn't invest in a dead economy. They only want dollars to invest in America because they believe the American economy is a good economy, i.e., a productive economy. Only Americans think we're not producing anything. So it's just wrong. And it can't survive. If it was hollowed out, at some point you'd run out of money. I mean, think everything regarding international trade, think about the grocery store. I run a trade deficit with the grocery store. I go to the grocery store, I buy groceries, I leave them dollars, and I take stuff. Where do I get my dollars? The only way I can get my dollars is if I work and produce somewhere else, not at the grocery store, but somewhere else. And whatever I do, whether I provide services to people, whether I sell them widgets, whether I sell them computers, whether I write software, whatever I do, I have dollars. And those dollars make it possible for me to buy at the grocery store. I'm not hollowed out because I have a trade deficit with the grocery store, because I have to earn. Troy, thank you, Troy. Troy came in with 500 Australian. I'm doing very well in Australia today. I hope all of you guys, by the way, are coming to Brisbane, are going to join us at the conference. I know Troy told me he's coming. I hope the rest of you are coming as well, you Australians. And if you live in Sydney, I hope to see you again in Sydney, like a day and 2 days after the conference in Brisbane. It's going to be 5 days of objectivism in Australia, 3 in Brisbane, 2 in Sydney. So please join us for both. Don't pick and choose. Come for everything. It's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity. Maybe not once in a lifetime. But there hasn't been an opportunity like this ever before in Australia. J-Lord, thank you, Troy. Really, really appreciate it. J-Lord says, I think you missed 2 of my super chats, but I will summarize them. Thoughts on the idea that John Calvin started modern capitalism, and did you enjoy Brisbane? All right, where are these super chats? When were they? Oh, I mean, I will answer the super chats when I get to them. So there's an order by which I answer super chats. I start with the ones that bring in the most money. I start with the ones that have put the most money forward. And then I go from there. So yours are in the queue. I will get to them. But since you've now added money, I will answer them. John Calvin did not start modern capitalism. John Calvin is anti-capitalist, was anti-capitalist, and has no real relationship to modern capitalism. Calvin viewed capitalism, markets, banking, interest, as sleazy, cheap, low, this worldly, ugly. In the afterlife, which is the ideal, in the ideal world, there are no financiers, there are no banks, there's no business, there are no profits, there is no capitalism. Said most, Calvin tolerated markets. But markets were already blossoming in places like Italy and Northern Europe, even before Calvin. Capitalism really is a consequence, as capitalism, not as just markets, of the Enlightenment and not of Calvinism. I have not been to Brisbane yet. Brisbane is in December, so when I will let you know if I enjoyed Brisbane when I'm there. Since you're in Australia, you should join us in Brisbane, which is December 4th through 6th. December 4th through 6th. Come on over. But I will get to your questions later on. I think you had a question about Bronze Age Privet as well. But that is in a while. I've got a bunch of questions before that. Dan, hi, Yaron. I'm not seeing any recent Trump rant videos from you on YouTube. Any chance you can make one from Kelly yesterday? I thought that was really good. I want to share it. Thank you for your work. Yeah, I'll have to ask Christian to turn my Kelly rant from yesterday into a video, a standalone video. I'll remind him. I don't know why. He's probably working on it, so it'll probably be out tomorrow. But I'll when the show is over, I'll email him and remind him to do that. Yeah, that was worth doing. Thanks, Dan, for reminding me. Hop up. If a nuclear holocaust didn't happen during the height of the Cold War, what are the chances it ever happens? I think high. I think the Cold War really did have an element of mutually assured destruction. I think that in the future, a nuclear war could start on some small scale where it wasn't clear the mutually assured destruction was going to be the outcome, but it just snowballed into something that we lost control over. So I wouldn't put that past us, and I don't think that the Cold War was necessarily the height of nuclear. I mean, what happens if China invades Taiwan and the United States steps in and China looks like it might lose and it's considering using a tactical nuke? I don't know. What happens if North Korea joins that war and because North Korea's run by a complete nutcase, launches a nuke against Japan, who's also joined the war, and the United States retaliates, and some of the radiation spreads into China, and China decides it's going to enter. You see, that's how I think a nuclear war would happen. Small scale, expanding into something very large scale. And with somebody like Trump or the brutal dictator of North Korea unthinkingly driving it towards something absurd, right? RW, I see a headline that said Trump will replace income taxes with tariffs. Thoughts on that policy? Better or worse than what we have? I mean, that headline was not real. He did not say he was going to replace the income tax, or he floated it for a second and then backtracked from it. It's not part of the plan. There's no way to repeal income tax. But it's a stupid idea generally. The government today the federal government spends today about 21 to 22% of GDP. There is just no way to get 21 to 22% of GDP from tariffs. You cannot replace the income tax with tariffs. The higher the tariffs are, the fewer imports we bring in, the more local stuff we buy, the less revenue you get from tariffs. So there's no way to raise the kind of money that we're talking about from tariffs. Now, if you wanted a plan to replace the income tax, then the proper way to do it is a sales tax. A sales tax across the board on all goods, imported or domestic. And in that case, you can replace the income tax. You get rid of the income tax, everything involved with the income tax. You could get rid of the constitutional amendment that made it possible, and we could institute a sales tax. And in that sense, that would be better than income tax. I prefer sales tax than income tax. But that's not going to happen, and Trump's not going to propose that, and he's not proposing it. A tariff, it's just stupid. Because again, the higher the tariff you drive it, the less imports, the lower the revenue. And you're not going to get enough, there's no way to have enough revenue. I think they ran the numbers at the time. Tariffs would have to be at 120% or something like that, or 200%, across the board, across all imports, and at the level of importation that exists today. But the level of importation that exists today wouldn't happen if prices went up by 200%. So it's just an impossibility. It's complete fantasy. Thanks, RW. Liam, is jealousy and stubbornness a core feature of the Arab culture? That's why engaging civilly with Israel is unimaginable to them. No, I don't think stubbornness necessarily is. I think it's mysticism and certainly envy. I wouldn't say jealousy, but envy. But it's a mentality of it's a culture of force. It's a culture of coercion. And it's a culture that is, again, it can change. Like the Arabs in Israel don't feel this way, but the people outside do, right? So I don't know that jealousy and stubbornness are features of the Arab culture, necessarily. There are other things that are. Primarily mysticism, right? Conspiracy theories because of the mysticism. Shahzbot, $20. Certain post-apocalyptic movies, apocalypse movies, provide perfect example of actual zero-sum economics. In particular, The Road, starring Viggo Mortensen. God, I think I saw I didn't see The Road. I like Viggo Mortensen, but I don't think I saw The Road. Yes, I mean, look, societies are force. Societies of coercion. Communism is zero sum. A lot of post-apocalyptic where you live by the sword is zero sum. Mad Max, zero sum. As long as we have a little bit of freedom, not zero sum. All right, Clark, are intellectuals who devise these statist ideas, in a sense, drifting as they are being guided by altruism? Well, drifting because they don't focus their minds, and yes, they are guided by altruism. So in that sense, yes, they're epistemologically or attention-wise drifting, but they've also chosen altruism, but they can't be consistent about it. And that's also a sense of a drift. Ian says, in the Road, there's no new food, so it's zero sum. Yes, if you can't produce more, it's zero sum. And that's, to some extent, what happens in communism. You just can't produce more. There's no increased productivity. It's zero sum. Marilyn says, will you do a PT via Zoom when you travel? No, he's going to give me exercises to do while I'm on the road. So he'll just give me exercises to do. Which, based on what he gave me today, shouldn't be too hard to do. Plus, there are gyms in these places. Basically, what he wants is for me to strengthen my shoulder muscles. So he's pretty aggressive about strengthening the shoulder. And then, so that's one type of exercise. Second type of exercise is just range of motion exercises. So just very gently lifting hand above head, which is painful, but slowly doing that to start breaking up the tissue and stretching and getting the arm used to that. So strengthening within the range of motion that is not above head and range of motion above head. Those are the things. Coke. I am Coke. I read the Bible for 2 hours each week on Twitch until I get through Mark and Matthew before taking a break to focus on other projects. Cool. He's Coke, and he reads the Bible on Twitch. And then I assume comments on it. I'm not interested in the New Testament. It's boring. I find the Old Testament much more interesting. The stories are much better. They're much more dramatic. They're juicier. They are more, I mean, this is why I think Jordan Peterson, a lot of his focus is on the Old Testament, because there's just more to talk about. So if I was doing something like that, I would do the Old Testament, not the new one. But I appreciate Cook doing the new one. And yeah, you've got a source now for Bible studies. Frederick. New Zealand is considering changing election cycles from 1 every 3 years to 1 every 4 years. What's best? The UK has 5-year cycles. I don't know what's best. I don't think there is such a thing as best in this context. I do think that 3 is too short. 4 or 5 makes sense. You want to give enough time so that you have policies that can play out, that you can actually see the results of. And I think 4 years is a good number for that. So 4 to 5 years. All right, lone dissenter. Trump, just on his own, can be checked by the Constitution, but the fascists, Vance, Hawley, NatCon movement, that will use Trump to jockey into power is ominous parallels, levels of scary. Yep, I've been saying that for a long, long time, and it's absolutely the case. They are really, really scary. And who is gonna control them? They're too smart to be controlled. And they are much worse than Trump because they're much smarter than Trump. Jerome, hi, Yaron. In an arts and humanities class, students learn about different ethnic artifacts around the world. Is it good to learn that different ethnicities have values versus race national ideal? Oh, God. I mean, it's only interesting in the context of history. It's only interesting in the context of, look, these kind of ideals that some groups have fail. They don't lead to good lives, and here are better ideals. So they're only good in showing the comparative worth, the comparative value. There's no value in and of themselves of primitive cultures and of emphasizing ethnic differences. So no, not in and of themselves. I think way too much time is spent on ethnic studies and ethnic this and ethnic that. Who cares? Eutychus, what do you think of the mid-flight airplane eviction analogy against abortion? What's your definition of inflation, money, currency, credit, and porn? God, that is a lot of question for nothing, for no super chat, just for being a member. I'll say, I think it's ridiculous, the mid-flight airplane eviction. It's absurd. A human being did not board the plane. A human being did not implant itself in a woman's stomach. A fetus is there in the process of becoming a human being. It's completely unrelated. The analogy just doesn't work. It falls apart. It is irrelevant. And as you know, I am pro-abortion. I'm not pro-evicting people out of airplanes. You're not in the stage of development in an airplane. You're not pre-human in an airplane. You're an individual in an airplane. And the airplane is not human. That's the other thing. The airplane is just a metal box. A fetus is inside a woman, a living, breathing human being, thinking, valuing human being. She has a life. Her values matter. What's your definition of inflation? Well, I'll just do inflation. I can't do all of those. My definition of inflation is the devaluation, the devaluing of money. Inflation is when money is devalued, where the value of money, when money is losing value. And you measure that in terms of its purchasing power. How much can it buy? All right, here, J-Load's questions. We finally got to them. J-Load says, thoughts on the claim that is not mine, but I heard said, quote, John Calvin's father, modern capitalism, or something like that. So I gave you my thoughts on that already. And then what was the second question? I read Bronze Age Pervert. Bronze Age Mindsets. It was garbage, yes, but it was funny. He thinks a good role model was Bob Denard. Yeah, I didn't find it funny when I read it. I found it pretty dumb and pretentious, and I don't know who Bob Denard is. Right, showing my ignorance. And as I said, I haven't been to Brisbane yet, so if you're in Australia, you should join us in Brisbane, December 4th through 6th. All right, guys, this is great. Thank you to all the Australians. We had a bunch of Australians today, but in particular to Troy and to Randall for together 1,000 Australian dollars. That is fantastic. It's too bad Australian dollar is not stronger vis-a-vis the American dollar. But when I come to Australia, it'd be better that the American dollar is stronger than the Australian dollar. So, it's in the end, it all is a washout. So 1,000 Australian dollars is incredibly valuable. Thank you. Thank you to all the super chatters. I will see you all tomorrow, closer to our regular time, I think, tomorrow. Again, my schedule is all over the place, but I think next week, tomorrow, closer to our regular time. I will see you then. Have a great rest of your evening. Yeah, bye, everybody.